Yeah, good morning everyone. So now let us see the experiment on CloudSim. The title which says that demonstration of where we'll be simulating a data center with one host and one cloudlet, whereby we'll be using the CloudSim. So before I'll take you directly to the CloudSim and get into the programming part. First, let us see the problem definition. So as far as this problem statement says that you will have to create one VM on the one host above the data center. So where definitely, so the user has defined, based on the user requirement, there is only one cloudlet. So that particular one cloudlet will be assigned to this particular VM. But the thing that the broker must know what is the requirement before the cloudlet is assigned to the respective VM. How the broker will come to know? It is purely based on the specifications defined at the cloudlet. So here it says that the length of the cloudlet is around 4 lakh, right? So it's something like 4 lakh instructions, and the file size they have defined as 3300, and output file size also as 300. And very importantly, they have mentioned something as fully utilization. So you will have to utilize all the resources of the respective VM to this particular cloudlet itself. Now it is a task of the broker. It is a task of the broker, because so there may be n number of VMs and n number of hosts. So for which VM you will be allocating this particular cloudlet, so that task will be taken care by whom? It is the broker, right? So if at all, if the broker has to take a call, in the sense it is again based on the resources which are available at the cloud. So here, if at all we know to know about the resources available in the cloud, you must know what are the resources available with the data center. So as of this example, you can observe data center which has architecture which is 86, and the OS in the data center, it is the Linux, and the hypervisor, it can be Zen hypervisors, which you may call it as VMM layer. Then the time zone they have fixed as 10, again cost is 3. So these parameters which we can consider, it is based on the real-time requirement, right? That's how data center is created. Then later, so you'll be having a host. As soon as whenever you say the data center is available, the data center is exist, in the sense definitely there will be a host which will exist in your data center. And what is the capacity, or what are the specifications of that host? In the sense they have specified as RAM capacity of 2048, which is almost a 2 GB, and the storage, which is the hard disk capacity, and bandwidth. This can vary based on the user requirement, right? And finally, whatever the VM which will be placing on above the host machine. So even the VM should also have its own capacity as a MIPS, which is how many million instructions you can execute per second, and what is the image size which is required, RAM capability of VM, and bandwidth, CPU, and again hypervisor are the VMM. One very important point, let me highlight here, that whenever you consider the RAM capacity of host as 2 GB, so definitely the RAM capacity of VM must be less than or equal to this 2 GB itself, should never be more than that, because you are placing the VM above the host machine. So the RAM capacity of a VM should be less than or equal to the a host. In the similar way, the MIPS, which is million instructions per second for the host. So if it is 1000 is the MIPS for your VM, in the sense definitely for the host should be like greater than or equal to, or definitely greater than this 1000 itself, should never be less. Now who is doing the task, or what is the task? It is the cloudlet. Who is doing? It is the VM, and this particular cloudlet has to be assigned to the respective VM. That process or that task will be done by the broker, assigning the respective cloudlet to the respective VM, right? So this is the problem definition. Now let me take you to the coding part in the. Okay, as mentioned, so in the previous session, so we have discussed about the setup phase, how to set up the CloudSim on the Eclipse. Even this video is available in my portal. I would say in my YouTube channel, you can look into this if you want to know how to set up the CloudSim on the Eclipse for recap, right? So you can search this CloudSim, setup on the Eclipse under my channel. So you can see this to learn how to set up this CloudSim in the Eclipse. Okay, right now directly let me take you to the first experiment. The first experiment is this one. like where you will be creating one data center, one host, one cloudlet, and one VM. But one thing is for sure, try to remember, media. So for some of the steps which we will be discussing today, which are common for all the further programs as well. So first step, where you'll have to initialize the CloudSim package. Second step, where you'll have to create the data center, because data centers are utmost important in the CloudSim. So then later, so and also keep one thing in mind, that you will have to create at least one data center. So you can create multiple data centers, but at least one data center is must. And while creating data center itself, you'll have to create the host, and you'll have to specify the specifications. What are the specifications are required for that for host and the data center, that you also you have to mention. That is what I call it as step 2. Then step 3, you have to create the broker. Okay, so you have to create the broker, and then create the virtual missions. Remember, the virtual missions which you will be creating, that is purely based on the specifications of the host mission. Where is the host is on the data center. So you have to create the VM, which is purely based on the specifications of the host mission. Then later, cloudlet is purely based on the requirement by the customer or a consumer or the user, end user you call it as. So based on his requirement, you have to create the cloudlet, then attaching the cloudlet to the respective virtual machine, that will be taken care by the broker, and then you'll be simulating. Okay, so these are the some of the steps which you're supposed to follow for all the CloudSim experiments which we'll be discussing. Now let us start with the first experiment, where you'll be creating the one data center, one host, one cloudlet, and one VM. As I mentioned, so while creating the data experiment in the respective CloudSim, first you have to create the class file. So till this creating the project, so I have given in the previous video, you can get into that. So now let us create the class file. So if I say that my class, so how to create the class file, I'll right click on my project, I'll go to new, and the class. So the class file name, I'll give it as CloudSim. So I'll give it as CloudSim example 1. I'll give it as a CloudSim example 1. So that is where, as I mentioned in the previous video also, so if at all, if you're not specified any package name, so it will be default package like this. Okay, now let us get into the steps. However, we said that the first step, so what is the first step? We have to initialize the CloudSim. I repeat, we have to initialize the CloudSim. As of now, already I had given all the packages as mentioned in the previous video. You can get into you can look into that. So now let us initialize the CloudSim. How to initialize the CloudSim? So before that, as this is the class file, so first let us initialize the main. So static void main. So let me, yeah, so this is a public void main. So this is where I'll have to give the command line argument. So I'll say the string args. So here it is public. So then I'll initiate, I'm starting the main program or main function. So as I am starting, we are starting the experiment. So you can define as log thing, which is static. I'm printing the data, right? So I have to use the print line. So I'm just saying that this is where I'm starting my simulation. Okay, so I'm starting the simulation. Then let me start. Even you can observe right here. So as I am using the log here, so where I have not included the required, I'm not imported the required package, so I'm getting the error. So how to import? So you can click here, so where it will only tell you how to import it. So the same you can utilize. But here, if you observe the com.sun.tools, but we are not using the sun tools, so obviously we are using the CloudSim package. So instead of the sun package, so I'll have to use the CloudSim package, which is here, you can observe. So I have to use this CloudSim import. So like this, you don't have to buy it, so you can reach out here. Okay, so now you can see as I have imported the log, so the log error related to the log is gone. Next, so inside the try block, I'll be using first I'll be initializing what as a first step we have to initialize the cloud sim. So how to initialize the cloud sim? So I'll say that cloud sim dot init, where for initializing cloudsim dot init, and inside this as usual you can see as soon as I type cloudsim dot init, so the package related to the cloudsim is automatically have been imported, and also it will only telling you that there are three parameters. And what are these three parameters in the sense? First parameter is the number of users, second parameter is the date and time, which is the calendar event, and third one is the trace flag details, trace details, log trace details. Now for suppose if I don't need if you say that 0, it says that number of users is 0, but definitely you need at least one number of user, right? So what I will do here, I'll say that number of users, so as a one parameter I'll say number of users, one variable, and this is as I mentioned, it is a calendar, right? And so this is related to the flag, right? A trace flag data, trace flag data. So as I mentioned, so this number of users, so let me declare this as int number of users as 1, as we should have at least one user, so I just made the number of users as 1. And when I say cal, so as the cal is I'm looking for the date and time, so I have to make use of the calendar 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 package. So cal is equal to, so calendar, you have to be specifically clear with the spellings as well. Get, I have to use the get instance. See, you can use get instance, right? So now as usual, so calendar is spelling mistake. Calendar, yeah, calendar spelling CALENDAR, yeah. So which is not imported, let us import. So as usual, calendar you can get it from the Java utilities. So here it is, right? So I'll just copy paste this, right? So calendar is important. In there is one more variable, trace flag. So now let me initiate the trace flag as. So do I need any kind of tracing in my program? In the sense, not required. So I'll just make the trace flag to be false. I don't need any trace to be done by you in my program. Let us see, you I just initialize the cloud sim right here. Okay, I just initialize the cloud sim, nothing else is done. So only step one is done, initializing the cloud sim. While doing that, number of users is done, trace events and library, everything is done. Now second step, now let's go to the second step. So what we have to do in the second step, as a part of second step, we need to create the data centers, right? As a part of second step, so for which obviously we'll be using the data center. So whereas see, you see this data center, this is what the data center is, the package which we'll be using, whereas here I'll be using one parameter as data center. This is a variable, I'll say data, this data center is a variable, whereas this data center is the a package, right? So create name of the data center, you can say anything as the name of the data center. For your information, I can say it as a data center 1, because you can say data center 1 or 0, because if you start from 0, you can say it as data center 0. If you start from 1, you can say it as data center 1. So this is where I am calling the create data center. Okay, so this is where I'm calling the data center. So where will be the, like, let us define this data create data center method somewhere else. As of now, this is where I'm calling the data center method for creating the data center. What is the name of the data center you are using? I'm using it as data center 1, whereas the variable is what? Data center is a variable. So you for your information, you can say like this: data center 1 is the variable name, and this is the package. Same way, data center package is not imported, so let me import that. So calendar, it is done. Yeah, here it is, data center, which I have to import. because data center I'm using, so that I have to import it. So like this, whichever you're using, so you have to keep importing them as well, right? Now this create data center method is not yet defined. Let us define now. So if you want to define the data center, even for your information, let us define this data center method later. Okay, first let us finish off these steps. Okay, here I'm calling the data center method. What are we going to do there? In the sense, as usual, creating a host with the specifications, all that we'll see that later. First, okay, that we'll see later. First, let us get into the next step, which is third step, where we'll be creating a broker. So as we want to create a broker, as usual, so I have to use a data center broker. You have to, everything is case sensitive, my dear. So data center broker is equal to, as usual, create broker. I'll be using a method create broker, right? So I'll be using method create broker as usual. This data center is a package, whereas this data center, create broker is a method. Okay, let us define this later. Again, as usual, create data center method, package we will have to import. So for that, so this is the statement which I need. So I'll be just copy pasting. So I've called a separate method to create the broker also. Okay, separate method is been called to create the broker also. So step 3 almost is done. Now let's get into the step 4. What are we doing in the step 4? It is where you need to create the virtual machine. So if at all, if you want to create the virtual machine, so I need to have a separate parameter which can hold the list of VMs which I'll be creating, because on a data center or on a host machine, it is not always you will have to create a single VM. So you can create the multiple VMs. So I need a separate parameter which can hold the list of VMs. So what I'll be doing in the sense, I'll be maintaining one variable as a VM list, which is equal to new array of array list. I'll be using for what? In the sense, to hold the VMs. To hold the VMs, I'll be using a separate parameter. So here, what is this VM list? In the sense, as I have not defined what is this VM list, so I'm getting error. So what shall we do? Let us define this in the even before I start with the main function. So let me define here, which is a VM list. So what is this VM list? I want it is a private. This VM list is a variable to hold the list of VMs. So I'll say private static list of VM, right? So that's how I'll be defining the I'm not saying I'm initializing or declaring the variable which is VM list, but this is static. Yeah, that's how I'll be declaring the VM list. But this is what list which I have to import again, like this list I have to import again. List is important, whereas VM is not it. Okay, Sun, you cannot import from the Sun tools. That also you have to be very clear, my dear students. You cannot do not import from the Sun. So for this list, I'll place it on the list. I can click here. You'll get for. Okay, still I'm getting for VM. Okay, first let us clear the VM itself. No issue. So as simple as you have this CloudSim, right? So there itself, instead of data center, you just initialize with the VM. That's it. In the same way, this list, whatever you have for this, now let us resolve that. Which you'll be getting like this. Don't import from the Sun tools, which is very important. You have to import from the Java util, because that is what the package which we attached as a commons math. Okay, so it is done. So VM list is done. Now array list is not yet done. So let us import that array list also. How to import? As usual. So here you have a array list, which is from the util itself, not from the Sun, right? So like this, a list is created which can hold the list of VMs. What is that name? It is a VM list. Once after the VM list variable is created, then I have to specify here itself. You can see while creating the virtual machine, you'll have to specify the description of for the VM, like what is the ID of it, what is the MIPS, what is the number of CPUs required, what is the image size, RAM size, bandwidth requirement, and also VMM, which VMM you would like to use, like that. All those you will have to specify. So now let us specify them. First, let us say that VM ID. So VM ID, you can like as you mentioned here as a one data center, you started every number. If you start with the one, here also you start with the one. If you said that here as the VM data center 0, then here you start with the 0. Let it be the uniformity. There's no consequence. I mean, there is no issue. So just for easy nomenclature, if you start from everything as 0, so it is what ID of the VM, it is 0, and MIPS is what you can say the MIPS. You can say the MIPS as what, anything which is what, something like million instructions per second. How many instructions you would like to execute per second? Just what are these things, all that I'll tell you, don't worry. So if I assume that your VM capacity, it can execute 1000 instructions per second. Okay, so that is what 1000 MIPS is million instructions per second. It is what 1000 million instructions can be executed per second by your VM, right? Then it is size of your image. For that I'll be using a size, so that also I'll make it as, generally I'll say it as 1000 or 10,000. So this I'm just making to be based on my requirement. I'm just making it as, again RAM is 512, you can say it as 1 GB. I'm setting as 512 MB. If you can set as 1 GB, which is 1024 MB. 1024 MB is equal to 1 MB. I hope you know that. Then bandwidth, let me set as something which is 1000. There is no, if you ask me, is it constant in a sense? No, my dear. It is purely based on the requirement you can set. Then again, PS number of CPUs, how many CPUs you want. So that's what PS number. So let me say that as of now, one CPU, it is what, single core, single CPU. If you want multiple, you can set as 2, 4, 8, 16, like that you can set it. Then we said that VMM is nothing less than the virtual machine, virtual machine. So your monitor version. So that you can say it as a, usually we say it as Zen, but you can also say it as ESXi. You have worked with ESXi, right? Like that you can set anything. You can set as Zen hypervisors, anything. It's the same as which hypervisor you would like to use, right? So like this, once after you specify the different specifications required, now let us create the VM. Let us create the VM by using this package, which is VM package. Okay, now let us use that VM package. VM is equal to, so VM, so let's say that VM0, what is the parameter I'm using as VM0 is equal to new VM of these. I have to list out. First is what, VM ID. Okay, first I have to use VM ID, then I have to use the MIPS per second you can have. Then I should have the PS number. So how many processors you are attaching to that, then what is the RAM of it, what is the bandwidth, whatever you have declared earlier, right? So those only I will be listing out. And new Cloudlet scheduler. So because this VM you are using for working with the Cloudlet itself, right? So I'll be using the Cloudlet scheduler. um, Okay, one more thing is that Cloudlet, whenever you will make use of Cloudlet scheduler, so here this particular VM is going to work with which broker is also you have to specify. Okay, as you created the VM, this VM is going to be attached to which broker, that also you have to specify as a broker ID. So as soon as you have the VM ID, here I should have the broker ID. What is this broker ID? Still we have not initialized. See, this is where we created the broker. Okay, this is where, as we created the broker, so this is, here you have to define the broker ID also, as the int broker ID is equal to this particular broker's ID I have to get. So broker dot, so likewise I have the broker ID also. That broker ID I'll be using here, right? So here you can see new Cloudlet scheduler time shared, for which again I'm getting error because you have to import the respective package. This is what Cloudlet scheduler how to. So what I did till now, so what we did till now in the sense, it is only required, VM is created, Cloudlet scheduler, time schedule is not, error is not gone. So actually this is normal scheduler we have taken, but here we are using the Cloudlet scheduler time shared. So respective, you have to use that itself as time shared, right? So time shared package itself we need, so that you have to import. New Cloudlet. Okay, there's a space between new and the Cloudlet. Yeah, Cloudlet time shared, Cloudlet scheduler time shared, right? So now we have created the VM. I repeat, we are done with the creating the VM. How many VMs you created now? Only one VM is created. That VM, let me push it to this VM list. Whatever the list we have, to that I have to put into that. So what I'm putting, so I'm putting this newly created VM into the list of VMs. How to do that? It is what, this VM list not add of what, add of this VM0. So what has happened, the whatever the newly created VM, that I pushed into the VM list. So how many VMs are there in the VM list now? It is one, because we just created one VM, right? So we are done with the creation of VM. As soon as you here, you can see, observe, I have mentioned. So create the VM, add to the VM list, then submit to the broker, which is very important. It is because broker is the one who will be allocating the cloud list to the VM. So you have to submit to the broker. How to submit to the broker? So that is well, where is the broker? Broker you have created. This is where you created, right? This broker dot, okay, broker dot. What are you submitting? You are submitting VM list. Will be, you have to use this, whatever the VM list you have, that you are submitting to the broker. So we are done with this step, submitting the VM list to the broker. Next, let us take up the creating the cloudlet. I repeat, creating the cloudlet. But how many cloudlets we are creating? Obviously we are creating only one cloudlet. So as usual, we have the VM out, we made use of one variable to hold the list of VMs. In the same way, we need a separate variable to hold the list of cloudlets. So for which I'll be using it as cloudlet list. Okay, cloudlet is list is equal to new. Same way, whatever we use this one, similar way, I can say new array list of, here what are you storing into that array? It is the cloudlet, is it not? Cloudlets. It's the cloudlets. But what is this parameter? Did we initialize that in a sense? No, right? So wherever we initialize the VM list, yeah, it is here. So there itself, you let us initialize the cloudlet list also, same way, private static list of list. But what list? It is the cloudlet list, is it not? So cloudlet. But again, same way, this cloudlet we have not yet imported. Let us import now from this similar way. So however you imported the VM, the similar way you have to import the cloudlets also, right? So created the list variable which is to hold the number of cloudlets, right? So now once after we create the list which can hold the variable which can hold the list of cloudlets. Now as usual, you have given the specifications for the VM. The same way, based on the requirement of the user, you have to create the properties of the cloudlet also. That's what you can say. However you create the description for the VM, the same way you should provide the properties or specifications of the cloudlet. But based on what are you giving those specifications, the sense it is purely based on the users. Okay, so now what are those? As usual, let me say that CID. What is CID? It is a cloudlet ID, because here I mentioned as VM ID, right? So here I am calling it as CID, and as I everywhere I used 0 itself as a number, so here also I'm starting the CID first cloudlet yes 0 itself. Again there is a long length, which is length, how many instructions you have in that what cloudlet. Okay, if I say that 4,000 for your information, let us discuss about that later. It is 4,000 or 40,000? It is 4,000, let's say. Here you understand, VM capacity we made as 5,000 MIPS, whereas right now length of cloudlet I'm saying it as 4,000 instructions, right? Again long. So what is the size of file? In the sense I can say it as file size as 300. This all these things will be defining based on the user requirements only. Output size, as I say 300 itself. You can vary these numbers. You can vary these numbers and see the results, how the results will vary. And now it is very important thing I'll be showing you. It is a utilization model. Utilization model is so important, which actually tell you whether you can utilize all the resources of your data center or not. That you will be getting to know with this utilization model. Utilization, I'll say that util model as a, because this model is a variable, whereas this utilization model is a package, right? So new utilization um, yeah, model, I'll say complete resources will be utilized for this. If I want to make use of all the resources for this cloudlet, then I have to use this full instead of we can have less number of utilization. So here I'll be utilizing everything, so I'll be using it. Okay, utilization model. So again, as usual, I have to import that utilization model as well. So I'll be importing that as a utilization model. So I'll be importing that utilization model. So utilization model is important, whereas utilization model full also I have to import. So you can see here utilization model full, that also I'll be importing. Like that, utilization model and utilization model full is important. I hope and it is understood. Utilization model full, why I'm importing utilization model, sorry, why I'm using utilization model full means in order to make sure that all the resources are utilized for your cloudlet. Once after the specifications or descriptions of the cloudlet, now let us create the cloudlet. Okay, so cloudlet, as usual, this is the cloudlet package whatever we used here, and this is the variable. Okay, there is a variable cloudlet is equal to just so cloudlet is equal to new cloudlet of these variables only. What are those? CID, what is the ID of that cloudlet, what is the length of the cloudlet. Okay, so what is the PS number? Okay, PS number actually we did not define here, but that PS number, it is again the processors, how many processors you require. Okay, it is, if you don't define, so whatever defined for the VM, that itself will be considered. If not, you can define specific again output file size, right, like output size. What is the output file size? Again utilization model, this one, util model, again utilization model, so full. So that, like that, you have to define all the parameters. As of now, it is enough. So likewise, you have to define, yeah, there is error. Okay, so likewise, so I'll be creating the cloudlet. Once after the cloudlet is created, then as usual, this cloudlet should be as a given to the respective broker. That's what, create a cloudlet, then add it to the list. Okay, before I can give it, I should add it to the list, then I have to surrender it to the broker. So what I'll be doing in the sense, I'll be using as this cloudlet. Okay, for that cloudlet, I'll be also attaching which user is that person who want to access this. It is the user ID of broker ID. It's the broker ID, because this cloudlet will be given to the broker itself, not to anybody else, right? So I'll be handing over to the broker. Then this cloudlet should be processed by whom? It is the by the VM, whatever the VM you created, which is VM0 you created, right? So he is the one who will be processing this particular cloudlet. So what I'll be doing, so the cloudlet whatever you created, that should be processed by whom, in the sense it is the respective VM. So who is that, in the sense for which I'll be setting the VM ID, right? also said it says that which cloudlet, this particular cloudlet is a task. However, we discussed in previous class also, cloudlet is a task which is created based on the user requirement that is to be processed by the VM, and which VM has to process that also we have specified here, right? Once after it is done, now I'll be handing I'll be listing out the, I'll be pushing into this cloudlet list. Add a whatever the cloudlet you created, that I'll be pushing into the cloudlet list. So once after this is done, okay, once after this is done, then I'll be submitting this cloudlet list also to the broker. However you created the VM, okay, however you created the VM and VMs are submitted to the broker in the same way. Once after the cloudlets are defined, then you have to submit to the broker. So for that I'll be using submit cloudlet list of what cloudlet. When you will be typing, you will get the previous parameters or previous variables, whatever you will be using, everything you can get it directly. Now, so once after it is done, what I have written next is starting the simulation and printing the results. So for starting the simulation, what I have to simulate, it is a CloudSim.start simulation, right? So I have to start the simulation. The same way, once after I am done with the simulation, I have to end the simulation, which is stop simulation. Is it not? So I have to stop the simulation like that, starting the simulation and ending the simulation. So then later, so whatever the results I'll be getting, that I'll be printing. For printing again, so I'll be using the, what I'll be printing, it is the cloudlet data. Cloudlet data I'll be printing as whatever the data is with the broker, get cloudlet received list. So this complete data I have to print, right? So only, so as whatever the final data is with the broker, that I'll be I have to print. So only that I have first I pushed on to the variable which is called as new list. Now that I'll be printing, for which let me call the method which is print cloudlet list of this new list. Whatever the status is there in this, that will be, I'll be printing. This is again a separate method, which is print cloudlet list is a separate method again. Okay, so you can observe, see from the time, so I'm getting the kind of error mark here, because this is the flag race which is belongs to the this try block. Whenever there is a try block, definitely there should be a catch, right? Because it is an exception handling mechanism. So let us have a catch block. Whenever there is a exception, whenever there is a exception, let me mention it as E. Whenever there is an exception, so what it has to, so let it print. What is that exception? Print stack trace. Let it print what is that exception, and also let it print as for a user understanding. It's all for the user understanding itself. Is there any compulsory in a sense? No. So let me print something as it is an unwanted error. Let me print simple as it is an unwanted error. So that's how. So catch and try, for this try, so exception is handled here by using the catch module or catch block. Now let us get into the each methods whatever we used. Here you can observe, inside this main method we made use of create data center, create broker, and here is for printing cloudlet list. Like that, three methods we made use. Now let us define them separately, which is out of the main method. So out of the main method means, you see 1 2 3 two open, so 1 and 2 close. Here I have to define the two methods, three methods, which is for one is data center, one more is broker, the other one is for printing, right? First let us go with the data center, which I'll say that private static data center, right? What is that method? It is a create data center, same method whatever you used here. It is a same method, create data center. Okay, the same method, same create data center. Whereas inside that there should be a name of the name of what? Name of the data center. I repeat, name of the data center. What is this name? If you ask me, this is what? Data center 0 is the name value for this parameter, which is name. Okay, now let me initialize this. right? So create data center name. Okay, let me as I have initialized this create data center method with the name. What is this name? As I mentioned, this is the data center 0 is the name of this. Okay, right? So now once after when we think of creating the what data center, so first you have to create the number of hosts. For creating the number of hosts, so as usual, first you have to define the specifications for the host, like what is the ID. I'll say that host ID. I'll say it as host ID. As usual, I'll start with the 0 itself, host ID, and RAM capacity of host. My dear students, what is this host? Where are we are creating? In the sense, it is inside the data center. On this host itself, we'll be placing the VM. Keep that in mind. Now you see, you understand this. So per suppose, as I'm giving the RAM for the host is 1024, as I mentioned, above the host you will be placing the VM. The RAM capacity of this VM should not be more than this host. Now as of in this example, what is the RAM I'm giving? It is a 1024, which is 1 GB. Whereas what is the RAM capacity of your VM? It is 512 MB. So it is okay. Even you can say it as 1024 itself as a VM for VM also, but not more than that, because VM is placed above the host. So whatever the RAM capacity you set should be RAM capacity of host should be more than your VM, or in the other way, reverse way, whatever the RAM you set for the VM should be less than the host. Okay. Then same way with the storage also. So which is storage means secondary storage. Okay. I'll say large number, which is the secondary memory space for your host. Again, let me say that bandwidth, again, it is also which is more than the VM, right? So in a simple manner, as I mentioned, whatever you set for the host, so all the specifications of your VM should be less than your host, should never exceed. Okay. Likewise, we will create one we have specified the specifications of host. Now let us create the host. While creating the host, again let us push it onto the for which you can say that host is equal to host 0 is equal to anything. You can say that new host of what are the parameters you defined as a host ID. Okay, host ID. Again, right now, as we are talking about the RAM, okay, second parameter, as we are talking about the RAM, so we should have a provisioning method. So I hope even when we discussed about the RAM, RAM provisioning, it is like if you remembered disk provisioning mechanisms, thick provision, thin provision. In the same way here also, you should set the RAM provisioning method, which is the simple provisioning method we'll be using. Okay. RAM, that's what RAM provisioner simple. In the same way, we have to use for bandwidth also. So bandwidth also I have to use BW bandwidth provisioner simple. Whereas what is this? It is a bandwidth for which I have set. Okay, then storage is there as usual. Then PE list. So okay, I'll come to this PE list. What is this PE list means? It is what about the processing elements, or you say the processing engine. This is what new processing element, you can say, a processing engine of your uh, host. That is what PE. What is that PE? I'll come to that. Then finally you should also specify the scheduler, which is very important, because on this host you may be placing the different VMs, but which are all the VMs will have the privilege to access the VMs, or sorry, this host. That is what will be, you have to specify with the scheduler by using the PE list itself. So what is this PE list? Now let's come back. What is this PE list? In the sense, even before that, we'll go to the point by point. See a RAM provisioner simple, for which I'm getting error. So what I have to do? So I have to import that. Okay, so as usual I have to import the RAM provisioner simple. So where it will be there? In the sense, it will be there in the provisioners. You will get, yeah, so we'll be having in the provisioners. So as usual, let me copy paste this inside the CloudSim. So okay, inside the CloudSim provisioners dot RAM provisioner simple. In the same way you need I am also using the bandwidth provisioner also, right? So for which I'll also use the bandwidth provisioner simple. And am I using any other provisioners? So no, right? Okay, fine. Now you see RAM provisioners simple. It is provisioner I had given, yeah. RAM provisioner simple. Bandwidth provisioner simple is also imported. Okay, host itself is not imported yet. So however you imported the log VM like that, you have to import the host also. The host also, because we are using the host also here. Provisioner simple, is it yeah, there is a small slight spelling mistake, so which is supposed to not, which you are not supposed to make it out. Okay, then p list, yeah, we are speaking about the p list. So p list is processing engine, or you say the processing element list, so which actually give you the processing capacity of your VM. So for that let us define the p list. What is this p list? In the sense, p list RDAF. So even if you ask me what is this, like how to create, in the sense we have to create with the p. Even before this you must know what is a p. P is nothing else. However, we say that processing element, you say processing engine, you say it is all says that how many CPU cores you require for your host. So that let us define as list p, as p list is equal to new array list of p. So yet what is this, still we have not imported the p. It is however you imported the VM and all. In the same similar way you have to import the p also. All those are the same CloudSim itself. So how to import the p also. Array list is also array list l caps. Then now you see, so we have to add the new p list. For that, add the new p list. For that, what I will be doing, in the sense, add a new pe. So what I'm initializing, it is a pe. So where is the, where id for the initial id is 0. Then new pe provisioner simple. However, you had a RAM provisioner simple, right? In the same similar way, you have to use the p provisioner simple. Simple, but so still this p provisional list simple is not imported. Let me import that. Instead of bandwidth, let me say that p provisional simple. And when you'll be defining this p provisional simple, you will have to specify the MIPS of your host. I'll say MIPS. So you have to specify the MIPS of your host. But what is this MIPS? You will have to specify the MIPS, right? What is MIPS? In the sense, the million instructions per second. So I'll say that 1000. Again, as usual, this is the MIPS of your host. Whereas here we have given the MIPS of your VM, and MIPS of your VM must be less than your MIPS of your host. That is very sure. Okay, now you see, so we are done with the p list also. Okay, VM scheduler is not yet imported. We have to import the VM scheduler also from the cloud bus, right? We have to import the VM scheduler also. So we have imported the VM scheduler also, and we have created the VM, sorry, not VM, host, right? Once after the host is created, and this host I have to add it to the host list. So for that, what we'll do, we'll create a separate list. We'll create a separate list as host list. Host list dot add of this host 0. Whatever the host 0 we just created. But what is this host list? So it should be created even before whenever we created here itself. Let me create list of uh, list of host, so which will be holding the host list as new array list of. So like this I have created the host list. So now host is created, that is added to the host list. Okay, VM scheduler shared is not yet done. VM scheduler shared, yeah. VM scheduler space shared, okay, correct. See, this is what we have to use, VM scheduler space shared, right? Otherwise you can use the time shared also. So space shared you'll be using in the further one of the experiment. So this is what time shared, yeah. Okay, we need the time shared will be using, it is where VMs will be using your host based on the time. Done. So host is created and that is also attached to your host list, right? Once after this is done, now we need to think of creating a data center. As usual, when you think of creating a data center, similar way, however you set the specifications for the host, you have to set the specifications for your data center also. What, how to do it? String which architecture you want. So I'll say that x86, you can say 64-bit architecture also, no issue. Again string so I'll say which OS I will be using, in the sense you can say it as Linux. I'll be using the Linux. Oh no, right? So which OS I'll be using, it is the Linux oriented. Then string VMM, which VMM I'll be using. So as usual, above whatever I said, it is the hypervisor. So I'll say it as Xen hypervisor itself. So you can also use the ESXi also, whatever we used in the other experiments. Okay, so that's a VMM. Which is next is what is the time zone you want. So that also you have to specify. So I'll say randomly I'm specifying it is you can specify based on the requirement. What is the cost you would like to quote? I'll say it as 3. Okay, so it is cost per resources. Okay, then cost double cost per memory. What is the memory cost you would like to charge? In the sense I am saying it as 0.05. You can change based on your requirement. Again, cost per storage, so how much I would like to charge. In the sense I'll say a very least cost, just 0.001. Again double cost per bandwidth. Like that you can set your own requirements. I'll say I am not charging anything for bandwidth. If I say it as I'm not charging for anything for bandwidth, like that. Okay, so however I made use of storage here. Okay, however we made use of a storage. So here we have set, right, what is the cost for storage, what is the cost storage of your host, all that. So for that we have to specify the uh, we have to have we should have a separate list which can have a storage list. Okay, so let us make use of one linker list. So having a, for what I'll be using, it is for holding the storage. So storage list of, I'll be using what, linker list. Okay, link list of storage. Fine. So again here is a linker list is not yet imported, right? So let us import the linked list. However, we have imported the array list. So in the similar way, however you imported the array list, in the similar way you have to import the linked list also. So fine. So we have imported the linked list storage. Okay, so okay, storage is not yet imported. Storage I have to import. Once after I'm done with creating a list for storage, now let us create the data center. Data center characteristics. What are the characteristics? We have characteristics, whatever we have defined earlier. So those itself I'll be using as data center characteristics. What are the characteristics? Just now whatever you said, which is architecture, what is the OS, what is the VMM, then which are the host list, okay, what are the different hosts you have, again what is the time zone, right? So what is the time zone, then so again the cost matters. These are the cost things, which is cost you have, again cost per memory, again cost per what storage, again cost per bandwidth, like that. You, what are all the specifications we have set earlier, so those things only I'll be just listing out. Again this character data center characteristics is not imported yet, so you'll have to import that data center characteristics, because whatever you have, that should also be here. You can see we have imported data center broker, right? In the similar way you have to import the data center characteristics. Characteristics, yeah, you have to import the data center characteristics also, right? Cost per storage, what was the spelling here? Storage you have to, okay, done. Okay, like that all the characteristics of the data center, whatever you just initialize, all those have set. Now now you need to create the data center. So while creating a data center, so how can you create a data center? In the sense, as usual I'll be using data center data center is equal to, initially I'll make it to be a null. Okay, initially I'll be make it to be a null. So that, again, see, data center, whenever you try for CAD, creating data center, every time it will never be success. So sometimes if the resources are not available, you cannot create the data center. So in for that sake, we are putting that into the try cache block. Whenever, if it is not possible to create the data center, it has to throw the exception. You should not harm the resources, right? For that itself, okay, what is the name of the data center? What name, which name is this? If you ask me, this is the name, whatever you passed as data center 0, you have passed, right? That is the name of your data center. Okay, then what are the characteristics? These characteristics, what are the characteristics you define? Then VM allocation policy, VM allocation policy, simple, of host list. What are the hosts you have created? For that you'll be allocating the VMs. So that is what, that it is allocated by means of this allocation policy. Again, this storage list, whatever you have created, storage list, comma 0. Likewise, be creating again this VM allocation policy error. So we have to import, right? VM allocation policy. VM allocation policy, however, we have imported earlier. So in the similar way, you have to import the VM allocation policy spelling allocation policy 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 simple. So we have created the data center and inside the try. So the reason that if the resources are not available, you cannot create the data center. So only we are putting inside the try catch. So for exception handling. So we don't let it print what is that exception. Print trace, right? So finally, once after I create the data center, let it return this data center. Whatever the data center you created, let it return like that. So data center creation method. This is what from here it is the data center creation method. So we are done with the data center creation. So we are done with the first mod. This is what data center create data center. Now let us get into the create broker. So when you get into the create broker, so again as usual after this let us get into the create broker, for which as usual private static, these are common thing, private static void print no, we are talking about the broker, yeah, not print, right? So private broker data center broker. Okay, so data center broker, right? Data center, yeah, data center broker, right? So what I'm trying to create in the sense broker itself, right? So data center broker, so broker initially I'll make it as be a null. However, here I made the data center as null initially. Again, as usual, I'll have to use this such kind of try catch for exception handling. So again, data center broker, whatever I'll be using. So here I'll say as broker is equal to new data center. So I don't need all this stuff right now. So I'll be creating a new data center, new broker, and I'll calling it as a broker, right? Again, as usual, as I mentioned, I'll be putting into the try cache, because if the resources are not available, you cannot create, right? So once after it is created, you will have to return that broker, this broker. So I'm done with the creation of broker also. So second calling method create broker is also done. Now we are left out with this print cloudlet list method. So now let us go to that print cloudlet method. So as usual, need to have public static void print cloudlet method, whereas what are you printing? Print cloudlet list, right? So inside that, what are you expecting? So here itself you can see what are you passing? You are passing the new list as a parameter, right? So what list? In the sense, it is a cloudlet list. It is the cloudlet list. It is a cloudlet list which you are passing as a parameter. Now, so inside this, so as I received this list as a parameter parameter here, first I need to identify the size of that list. Okay, what I'll do, I'll say int size is equal, because how many how many cloudlets are there in that, I should find out, right? For that itself I am finding out the size. So I'm finding out the size of that list. Then I'm defining a separate variable for the cloudlet, whatever you received here. For that I will let me define a separate variable as cloudlet. So even if you don't define also, nothing is going to happen. So I'm just defining the cloudlet variable for this cloudlet whatever I have received. Then I have to start printing. So let me write as log dot print line of output, whatever I will be printing, right? So let me write as log dot output. Let me write like this. Okay, from there I'll be start printing the output. So because before this you will get the log data. Okay, before this you will get the log data. For this you are getting, even for your information, if at all, if you want to understand now, do you need this? In the sense, actually you don't require this. Even without the further part also, you can complete the execution. For your understanding, let me show you that. See, if I run this program, whatever I just created, if I run this as usual, I'll right click, go to run as Java application without the print method. I repeat, without the print method also, I'll be getting the output. You can observe. But the thing that if you want to get the output in the proper manner, so I'll be using this print method. So even if you don't use that also, no issue, you will get the output. Okay, you'll get the output even if you don't use that also, right? So in those lines, let us get into the output part. As I mentioned, even if you don't go with this part also, you will get the output. But in order to print the output in the proper way, we are using this print method, right? So what are all the things I'll be printing? Let us put it in the format. So print line of so let us first print the cloudlet id again. Let us print what no, let us print the data center id. Even before that, what is the data center status of that cloudlet? Again, data center id. Again, let's say that so VM ID, what is the ID of the VM? So like that. So let us get into the time. Let us get into the when exactly. See, this time is something like totally how much time it has taken. Again, when exactly it has started, right? So when exactly it has ended, like this end time. Okay, all these things like this you can print out. So as I mentioned, for it is not that much important to print this if have this print method. If you even if you don't have this print method also, so you can get it. So there is nothing wrong in that. Only thing is that now to get the output in the proper way, we'll be using this print method. Okay, so for that is what that's how you'll be keep printing. Let me continue. Print out. So as I mentioned, for it is not that much important to print this if have this print method. If you even if you don't have this print method also, so you can get it. So there is nothing wrong in that. Only thing is that now to get the output in the proper way, we'll be using this print method. Okay, so for that is what that's how you'll be keep printing. Let me continue. So instead of simply wasting your time, so what I'll do, I'll just get that print method here and I'll just put it for your sake. Instead of wasting the time on this typing part, so I just copy paste it. And okay, here decimal format. So again, for which also I need to import the decimal format. Like this, you can see here is a decimal format for which I'll have to import the decimal format. Yeah. Now, if you observe, so yes, are there any warnings or errors? So here is one warning you can observe. Okay, so actually we have created the data center ID. So we are calling the data center method from this instruction. So as such that data center is equal to data center 0, where the data center 0 is the parameter. As I mentioned, this data center 0 is a variable, whereas okay, it is saying that it is nowhere used. No issue, so nothing to worry. Anyhow, it is called, so it is no problem. So let us run the program. So exception is throwing. So entity name cannot spaces. Where, okay, this one. Name whatever I have specified, that should not be, you should not have spaces, because whenever you have a spaces right there, it will never consider. That is what it's showing. See, now you got. So as I mentioned, when we had when I had given as data center space 0, I was not getting error. So even you can see it was throwing an error. What was the error also? If you want, you can see here as see inside this entity name can't contain spaces, so should not use spaces here. So you can say continuously, otherwise underscore whatever, but do not give space in between them. So like this, directly you have it and execute. Now I hope it is visible to you all. You can see the output. Before you see the last final output, you see the initial one. See, starting, you are starting simulation, initializing. First you are initializing the CloudSim, then data center is starting, then the broker is starting. Now entities are started. Now you see at the time 0, at the time 0.0, broker is received one resources. At 0.0, broker is also trying to create the VM0 on where? On the data center 0. Okay, VM0 is created on the data center 0. At point 1, VM is been created at data center 2 with the host ID as 0. Like that, you can see at point 1. So broker is sending the cloudlet to the VM0, because here at the 0th second, broker got the cloudlet. Now at the 0.1, broker is allocating the cloudlet 0 to the VM0. At 4.1, cloudlet 0 is received. Okay, and 4.1, all the cloudlets are executed, and once after the as the all the cloudlets are executed, at 4.1, VM is also deleted. That's what destroying the whatever the VM you created here, that you are destroyed. Now the broker is shut down, simulation is done, so you are shutting down everything, simulation is completed. Now as I mentioned students, so even if you don't use, I told you right, even if you don't have this last part, which is print part. Okay, even if you don't have this print part also, nothing to worry, because you will get till here. As I mentioned, print part is only to put the data output in the proper format. That is what this. So what is the cloudlet ID 0? That, okay. What is the status? Success. What is the data center? Here itself it is saying that data center 2. And what is the VM ID? It is here itself it is saying that VM ID. And here itself it is saying that total it has taken, how much time it has taken, 4 seconds, right? Because it is started at 0.1, ending at 4.1. Starting time is 4.1, ending at 4.1. So total time is what? 4, right? So that's how. But if you want to know even little more, first suppose here you understand. So now if you say that, see, my VM MIPS is what? 1000. Okay, my length of this what cloudlet is what? 4000. So in order to complete the 4000 instructions, how many seconds is required? That is what this story. 4000 instructions are there, and you can execute 1000 instructions per second. So totally you require only 4 seconds, is it not? Now you see, if I make it as 40,000 instructions is the length of your cloudlet. If I say 40,000 is the length of instructions in your cloudlet, and your VM can execute only 1000 instructions per second, so how much time is required to accomplish that cloudlet? So definitely it is 40 seconds, is it not? Because your cloudlet length is 40,000 and VM has a MIPS of 1000, so it requires 40 seconds. So that is what it's showing, right? So it started at 0.1, ending at 40.1. So total time taken is 40. Even if you say this one was, let's assume, if the length of, now you see, length of your cloudlet is 4000 and length of your VM is only 100. If your length of, sorry, not length, MIPS of your VM is only 100, it means to say that you can process only 100 million instructions per second. But your cloudlet has 4000, means how much time it will take? Definitely it requires 400 seconds it requires to complete the task, is it not? Like this. So like this is what the end of the experiment, where you will be having the one VM and you will be creating one VM on the cloud, one VM on the host to process the one cloudlet of so and so capacity. Like that, as I mentioned here, every parameter is whatever I have defined here. It is only just an example. You can vary the respective parameters and see the results how they will be keep varying. Okay, so yes, students.